Support for Back to One from Committed Impulse, a high-performance training program for actors and entrepreneurs, taught by Josh Peiss. Discounts for Back to One listeners are available for upcoming courses. Go to committedimpulse.com/back-to-one and enter the code BACK-TO-ONE.
Something happens, figure it out, fix it. You need to skip ahead to find your way back to the text. Skip ahead. I don't give a shit.
That's Evan Cuyler-Louison, the writer and director of a new play called A City of Refuge. He invited me to sit in on some rehearsals. When I got there, they were in their fourth week.
Oh, okay. And here's the other thing. If you don't keep it alive, you're going back to one, starting from the top. That's the way the rules of the game are played. Forgot to mention that. So keep it alive. Otherwise, go back to one and do it again.
Okay, everyone, back to one. Roll sound.
Sound space. Rehearsal, a very special episode.
Drum roll.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
So are you here for the rehearsal?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm Peter.
Oh, hey, Peter.
Let me start with a confession. An embarrassing one, actually. I think I'm afraid of rehearsal. I host a podcast where I talk to actors about acting, but I'm such a film guy, I've actually never been involved with a theatrical rehearsal in any capacity. Certainly not as an actor. Despite being the president of the drama club and called class actor in the yearbook, I never stepped foot on the stage. You can call it stage fright, but that's just one of the many frights. The first one is fear of rehearsal. I cringe just thinking about doing anything at 100% over and over again, adjusting it, trying different things, living in it not being right, taking direction, it not working, and then trying it again, and it's still not being right. I also have a fear of being on the other side, directing actors in a play rehearsal, and having to make these people go through all the things that I fear. Talking to all these incredible actors for Back to One has actually gotten me over this fear a little bit. It's given me a newfound respect for process, which I don't think I ever had before. It got me thinking that I might actually at least like to sit in on a play rehearsal. And it was right around that time that I was thinking about this that I got a call from Evan Cuyler-Louison. He's a New York writer, actor, director, listener to the podcast. He invited me to come check out the rehearsals for a production of a brand new play he wrote and directed called A City of Refuge. It's for the theater company he belongs to called Primitive Grace Theater Ensemble. You might remember its co-artistic directors, New York theater legends Paul Calderon and David Zayas, when they were guests on Back to One. I thought it was a good opportunity to safely observe a play come together in rehearsal and learn about what the actors need, what some of the obstacles are, and the various ways to deal with all of it, and maybe have an opportunity to ask a few questions.
How are you? Everything good?
Everything's good. That's good. Now we're nice and warm in here.
We just got in here. We're just about to get started.
When I arrive, I'm led into a small chapel where the rehearsals are happening. A City of Refuge takes place in a recently deconsecrated church during the Washington Heights riots of 1992. Louison wrote the play specifically for the theater it will be premiering in, the Center at West Park, which happens to be an old deconsecrated church on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I live 10 blocks away and only recently knew it was now a performance space. There's been scaffolding all around the church for as long as I can remember. They aren't allowed into the actual space that the play will be performed in quite yet, so they have to do rehearsals in this rundown chapel down the hall. It's kind of dusty and dirty, and there's just this feeling of old, but not in a good way. I was warned not to sit in a particular pew because it's about to fall apart.
The service in here is pretty wonky. The bell that you can ring is chapel, if it's at the start of the day, but if we're started already and you're coming in the middle, you just text, I'm going to have you have because there's interns.
Okay,
so
okay.
My fear kicks in, but it's a little different. I'm afraid my presence will somehow interfere with the rehearsal. I know I wouldn't be cool with someone showing up with a tape recorder if I was trying to rehearse this intense material. I'm introduced to Luke Edward Smith, who plays the priest, and Ylfa Edelstein, who plays the lay reader. They are welcoming and nice to me, but I try to keep my distance as they begin to work.
More Kathleen to kind of come up and spiral out, right? So that we can have her opened up, right? And basically the move on that line is, now who's making excuses, right? Like this. And then what it does is it creates your corner here, right? And so what that allows you is the ability to, again, be like, you're taken in by them, those Matos boys, and send that out there, right? And because the real thing is that a lot of this next part, right, should be like over the shoulder, right?
They're at the point in the rehearsal process where it's all about the blocking. In film, this is important, of course, for a bunch of technical reasons. I guess I didn't think it needed to be done with this much exactitude on the stage. But of course it does. I quickly recall a bunch of plays I saw recently that didn't put a lot of thought into this. You could tell.
Dynamic to like bring her out here, and then have her return. Take it to him a little bit, but not too much.
Louison here knows what he wants. He speaks to them with confidence, and his authority seems comforting.
That's simple enough that it's not really changing too much.
Yeah, let's just step it through. And, see if we can.
I think if what they say is true, then you must have had a good reason. I think if somebody came to you in confidence and told them they were in danger, that somebody was hurting them, then you must have been doing
I can't believe
right.
this. Stop! This isn't a guessing game. Look around you, Kathleen. This isn't exactly the castle you'd want. It's a fire trap. Might as well be condemned, but no matter what happens to destruction, one thing will... Actually, I want to look at it.
I know. So
But I can't look at it from here.
I know that. I'm saying the instinct is good, but what I want you to do is stay a little bit right. Okay? Because then what you do is, right? This.
But then I'm upstaging myself.
No, listen to me, man.
Luke mentioned something that I make note of.
Fine. Finish what you're saying, but you're upstage, and I don't want to upstage myself into this speech.
I don't want to upstage myself. Later, I ask Evan what he meant by that.
I think I know when an actor upstages another actor, but how could you upstage yourself?
You direct something that's important and should be directed toward the house, right? Upstage. And you effectively lose important aspects of the dialogue or the performance.
Oh.
Yeah. That's the most literal sense of it. Upstaging another actor is to distract from their focus,
Yeah.
upstage of them.
Yes, I see.
And to take focus, draw focus away from them is, a capital offense in this, at least within this group of people, we're very conscious of. This is a very visual frame that we're trying to create. We're not trying to, just have people wandering around, while other stuff is going on. We're trying to be very specific. If this is where the focus should be, then this is where the focus should be. Don't distract from that.
How much of this is you letting actors find their way, seeing how they move and how they want to move based on what they're reading, and how much of it is you telling them what to do and then letting them have that freedom in that restriction, which I think is a real thing.
Well, first off, I have an idea, right? I come in there and I'm like, all right, this is what I want to see, right? We try it. Within that idea, I give them certain points, certain frameworks to coincide with the text and with the character development work that we've done. But I allow them a lot of freedom within that framework. That's the majority of the time. Other times, when I feel we're too pressed for time to really scrutinize and obsess with a framework, then I will sit back and say, show me something, and then we will adjust. To be honest, that on this project has been very rare because I've been pretty obsessive with certain images, but we've also found a lot of things. It's not like I come in there with the previs, I go in there knowing what I want, and then sometimes it doesn't look right. And a lot of times, the actors will have instincts that are better than I expected. You can't do anything without the actors, so the best thing is when the actor is intuitive and innovative with your text.
Yeah, I think what we want to do is be very specific, like no more than 3 down.
In the middle of a discussion about props and set decoration, Luke says something very interesting.
Well, we have some smaller cardboard boxes that I can move up and down and shift around.
We had thought about that.
I just don't want to run out of things to do. Even if I never touch them, I just don't want to ever be like, somebody goes up on a line and we take a moment to find where we are or something. I don't want to pause. I want to be able to have business to do to cover it, you know?
No doubt.
As much as possible.
I mean, I think also...
I talked to Luke about this.
I heard you say that you would really like to start playing with these books and props up there, and you call it, business. I need to be doing my business. Tell me why that is important to you at this stage to start physically doing work up there while you're rehearsing.
I mean, we've all seen those shows where it happens a lot in Shakespeare, which I've done a lot of, where people stand there and declaim and they just deliver lines, and it gets boring real quick. Yeah. And so part of it is making it interesting and living on stage, and the other part is it helps ground me as a performer. If I've got stuff to do, I can't be worrying about what is coming next and what's just happened. I'm just got to keep doing it. It just keeps grounding me in what I'm doing. And I find that very useful, very helpful.
On the second day I was there, I came in midway through Evan walking Wilton Guzman, who plays the parishioner, through his big scene.
Right? Like that, right? And he comes down here, right? For this next thing, right? Okay, Gus, conversation over, sit down, right? It would even be like when Barrington says that, sit down, it's like, I can't count on nobody. Victor run off with trash like this.
You were pretty much acting out Wilton's lines. That was different than what you were doing the day before with the other 2 actors. I was wondering what your rationale was for that.
Well, first off, Wilton Guzman does not need someone to give him line readings or to design his blocking for him. He's a preternaturally, self-possessed talent in and of himself. But Wilton came in very late in this process and basically saved this show from going under. We were having a real problem casting that part. And as soon as it came time for us to really make the part his, right? Because the part was changing depending on what direction we were trying to go with it. We were doing a lot of rewriting. And he hit the ground running, but you got to help a guy out, so he came in with half the rehearsal time and half the preparation time of anybody else.
These fucking people trying to put my family out of business for years. Want to clear us out till we got nothing but crack houses and shooting galleries on every block. So this part, don't get in the corner yet. Come down here and be like this. Be like, I can't count on nobody. Victor run off with trash like this. Fucking people trying to put my family out of business for years. They stop at nothing till we got crack houses, shooting galleries on every block. Right?
I'm really curious about where the actors land with the idea of learning lines in relation to blocking. I walk with Wilton and Miah Kane, who plays the stranger, on their way to get some food, to ask them.
To me, I'm typically getting off book and then taking it to the next step of getting it on its feet when I'm doing my homework at home. So I'm not the type that I need the blocking and the words, but I think that once you get the blocking, it can kind of cement the words in the memory even more because you have the actions behind it. I do know other actors that it's important for them to learn the lines with the blocking. Yeah. And maybe that's the way to do it, but I just have a method that I've used.
Yeah,
it
works, right?
For me, I like to be off book. Yeah, I think it makes it a little bit easier to sort of grab direction. But also, like he said, at the same time, it helps with getting off book through the process of the blocking. Because it just stays with you.
Now, this is the first time this guy is directing Evan, right?
Yeah, he's doing a phenomenal job.
Is he?
In my
Is he?
opinion.
Okay.
I believe so, yeah.
And so what was it that made you guys trust him? Is it just because Paul and David?
I personally trusted him because I just recognized his talent as a writer, and then with talking to him about the characters, he was so detailed about their backstory and their inner life that I knew he was going to be very detailed about at least the characters and their story. And so I was just taking a leap of faith that as a director he was going to be equally as good. And from working with him, he seems to know a lot about the craft of stagecraft and blocking, and seems to be doing a really good job.
It's kind of phenomenal in that he has his vision.
Ylfa Edelstein.
It's very clear he knows what he wants, and there's no doubt about that, you know? So, and that's really great for the actors because he's set the course, he knows where he's going, and he's taking us along with him. And so as an actor, if you have that trust that this person who both wrote and is directing the play, like, there shouldn't be any doubt that they know what they want. So my job is to just really trust that and get over kind of the fears that come up, the resistance, the sort of my own shadow side that arises. I feel like that comes up a lot because, these are incredibly stressful circumstances. This play, it's like very heightened life circumstances. And so I've been really watching my own fears and perfectionism and inner critic and, worthlessness and self-hatred and all that comes up as this stew is being made. And then I just have to go, but that's, just put it into the play, take care of myself and, do a lot of self-care, like a lot of baths, a lot of yoga, a lot of stretching, a lot of meditating, a lot of breathing, and just know that whatever's coming up for me is what is coming up for Kathleen. That she's had an eternal battle with the men in her life and the church, which is very patriarchal. So it's just like wearing her down, and she, goes through an inner explosion, especially in the second act when, basically her life has fallen apart. So it's there's like a time in the process where that's like hard to parse out, separate the process with me, Ylfa, and Kathleen, and sort of it all blends together. You wanted to become one.
Look, I'm new to these people, right? They don't know me that well, right? So a lot of this has been trying to establish trust to convince them and reaffirm to them whatever sense they have that I know what I'm doing, that above all, I'm not going to let them look stupid, right? But guess what? It's never enough. There's still a limit to anyone's willingness to be fearless, right? Very few people, especially actors who have an idea of themselves or at least think they do, right? Know who they are and what their skill set is. It is very difficult to get them to trust you to the degree that they would do something outside of their comfort zone without having some sense of paranoia that it's going to be in some way unflattering or embarrassing for them, right? But with me, what I try to impress upon them as much as possible is look, I've done this bit that you're doing a lot, right? And I did it in short films, I did it in feature films, I did it on stage, and guess what? I couldn't see myself on stage, but I was in productions that didn't get that much applause, right? And they got bad reviews. And on screen, I've seen myself more off than not. And looked up there on screen and said to myself, how the fuck did that happen? And if the director had been there next to me, I would have turned to him and been like, how the fuck could you let that happen? How could you let me do that? How could you let me look like that? You know, like, what a betrayal it is, you know, to feel like you've given of yourself and they don't even care, you know, like, and yes, there's an aspect of vanity in that, right? And an aspect of self-obsession, right? And narcissism in that, right? But beyond that, also, there's also an aesthetic value to the judgment, which actually is more objective and impartial than you may think, because people have sensibilities even before they become obsessed with their own reflection or become preoccupied and fixated upon their imperfections, right? So I try to reiterate over and over and convince and persuade and, you know, make it very clear to everybody involved, I am not gonna do anything that makes you look bad. I just want it to be true.
We'll be right back after this. I have to tell you that when we first started talking about doing ads for this podcast, I was very reluctant. I myself do not want to be peddling anybody's product that I wouldn't want or need or like. So you can imagine my delight to be talking to you about Committed Impulse, which is a class taught by Josh Pais. When Josh was on the show a couple episodes ago and started talking to me about Committed Impulse, I became very angry because a couple months before that, a young actor had come to me asking for advice on an acting class. I gave him some options, but I wish I knew about Josh's class then, because this class would be perfect for this young actor. It's actually perfect for anyone, not just actors, entrepreneurs, public speakers, anybody who wants to remain in the moment no matter what the situation is. What I really like about what Josh teaches is that you're not negating anything that's going on within you. You're using it and being creatively unstoppable. What really excites me too is that Josh treats this thing like a lab. He takes information that he gathers from other acting jobs, other great actors, and puts it back into the class. I want to be a part of it. If you do, all you got to do is go to committedimpulse.com/back-to-one. Enter the code back-to-one, and you get $25 off any upcoming classes. Again, that's committedimpulse.com/back-to-one. Enter the code back-to-one. After lunch, there's what's called a speed round.
What you got in your bag? Nothing?
What I said.
That's it?
I just told you.
Tom!
What is it?
We can't do this here. He could die.
We don't have a choice.
He needs an ambulance.
I don't even realize what's
Make
going on.
it clear. Let me go look.
No, stay with him.
You got a name? And don't tell me I'll answer her. You know him? You know each other?
Asshole, tell her your real name.
Jesse.
Okay, Jesse. Get up off your ass and give up my hand. She needs help. Hey! Did you hear what I just said? No, I don't know you.
Tell me what that speed round was. What was the benefit of that, doing that?
I like sports analogies, so it's kind of like the team doing a warm-up or a musician doing the scales.
Yeah.
So it sort of gets it into your muscle, gets it into your brain more.
I think another thing it helps with is the urgency of the scene.
Hailey Marmolejo.
Both of these scenes, all of this, the whole play is very urgent, and I think speeding through the lines helps us pick up on our cues and keep the urgency there.
You're not just saying Connor's life, you both need to get your
It's
shit.
her boyfriend.
No shit, so what's the fucking problem? There's no time for this. I don't care who goes, just somebody go. Go! If there's water there, bring it up. You understand?
Then Evan lays down the rules for the no stopping, no line calling run through.
Let's think of this like a game. Game is called Keep It Alive. If something happens, figure it out. Fix it. You need to skip ahead to find your way back to the text. Skip ahead. I don't give a shit. What do I care? What I care about is that the body on the operating table does not die. Okay? So, You see somebody faltering, help them out. Find a creative way to do it, a way that doesn't give away the ghost.
What was your rationale for saying, look, there's no stopping on this one. If you stop, we're going to do it over. The game is keeping the patient alive.
Yeah, the body alive on the operating table is like just this image I have of like when someone freezes, right, on a stage point.
Yeah.
What happens in my mind is whatever semblance of like an alternate reality that they're creating up there, it just dies. And all of a sudden you see actors instead of being sucked into this new world illusion. So that's, to me, that's like the whole game is like, can you make it work? Because it's like if you have the text as this thing that's basically there to keep you tied in to character and narrative, right? But we're people, right, who are imperfect. We have flaws. We have recall failure at times, and we find ourselves in the wrong place for a line or an action, right? The real test of our ability to maintain the illusion has to be, can you find your way back to the text? If you get lost or adrift, right, can you find your way back in a creative way that doesn't show, I forgot my line, right? Or that can you improvise something that is in the same voice as the script, right? So that it doesn't feel like an apparitional moment. It feels like of the same piece as the script. And that's difficult because not everyone's a writer, right, or an improviser, but it can happen if you practice and you work at it. And then also, I say, like, in turn, if you see someone else faltering, right, beginning to totter, don't just fucking stand there, like that's the moment that like the air's about to come out of the balloon. So keep it up, like that's what it is. It's like a game, and if you play it like that, you find yourself getting better at rolling with the punches, thinking on your feet. That's kind of the whole deal.
And even at this point, you're saying it's important at this point in the thing to start doing
We're
that.
2 weeks away.
Oh, really?
We open 2 weeks from tomorrow.
God,
First preview is 2 weeks from tomorrow night. Tech starts on Monday. This is the 4th week of rehearsal. So to me, if we're not, if we're not testing ourselves on that level and facing consequences, like, all right, you let it die. I see that it just died. Get going. Start over. Start over. We need 2 of these before we can move on to the last scene. We need to show that the first act is solid. So that's what we're about to do again. We're about to do it one more time.
That's what I come up here for? Bust your tired ass and bang a parish poor box for $1? You want to come up for air and get a reality check? Should take a look outside and see what's going on in the streets. Right outside your door.
The next day I come in right in the middle of the most intense moment in the play. I feel bad to slide in and can't help but think I must have been a distraction.
It was just walking in a minute ago.
The taps ran out. The sink was dry.
The fires, oh my God.
Take a place. Put your hands there. Yes, you can. Just do what I'm saying, please. Put your hands there or you're going to die.
I see Evan, who is seated, rapidly moving his whole body back and forth as he watches them do the scene.
You want to tell me what happened? You feel free anytime, okay? Hey, Gus. It's going to be okay, all right? Hey, listen to me. We're going to be okay.
And when it's over...
Yes! Great. That was fucking great.
You're moving like this when you're sitting down.
Oh, I'm doing that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Isn't it? That's really cool. You didn't know that.
I'm not really conscious of what I'm doing. I'm getting into what they're. I feel myself into what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's exciting to watch that for me.
It sure is, yeah.
It's exciting to watch them.
When this thing on paper.
I've had someone else say that to me before, that it looks like I'm conducting something, but like I don't really think about it like that.
Tell me why this was different. Where she called for a line, so it wasn't the same game as you played yesterday.
Well, because we never did this before. This is the first. This is still we're still in line call for this scene. So the scenes that you saw yesterday, those we'd already done a line call for. So once you do that, then you move into a stage where you're past line call. Now it's just figure it out time, because then you're slowly getting closer, integrating your mind to the performance point. You know, that level.
Scenes yesterday had a line call
last week. Yeah, the line call for that was last Saturday.
Everyone is anxious to get into the real space next door, the church proper, where the real stage is.
But we just found out today that we're going to actually get to go over there Friday and Saturday. So Friday we're doing the last scene, and then Saturday we're doing the whole show.
Next, they sit around the table and go through cuts.
This is where it starts to get troubling in terms of the pace from here on. So this is where, and it's going to hurt, but we're going to make these cuts, because even though I like some of the lines, I don't think that it's moving quickly enough. So we're going to lose kneecapped and leg locked.
So nobody's heard from you.
I can see that. Nobody heard from you since Saturday, right?
Just a suggestion, if you're open to hearing anything.
Hold on a second. I'm just trying to...
Sometimes an actor has a suggestion for a cut. Like that happened one time. You didn't seem to completely knock that down, but how did you feel about that? You're
Good
smiling.
Question. Well, the diplomatic answer is I welcome any and all input, and I'm even open to discussing any and all input, and I even am open to taking any and all input to heart after I've heard it the way that it's written. I did more drafts on this in less time than any other project I ever wrote, and I wrote a lot of projects that never went anywhere. So maybe this is what it takes. This many drafts, this close together, this many cuts, right? The script was originally 135 pages, now it's down to 86. So, okay. Obviously, I'm like any writer, totally incapable of producing the perfect draft right off the bat, right? But here's the thing. The problem is precedents get set when it becomes collaborative that can sometimes disrupt a process of realization, right? So a vision is one thing, but then realizing that vision requires order, right? And I'm totally open to discussing things, but I need to hear it the way it is actually written, because first off, I might agree with that cut, and I'm not saying that if you bring me an idea for a cut, I won't just be like, yeah, sure, yeah, that's fine. But most of the time, I would prefer to actually hear it. Unfortunately, I have some bad news.
We're all five?
No. They just told us that we actually are not going to be able to get in there next door Friday and Saturday. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I told you all and then they changed it. I did not think that was going to happen, and I probably shouldn't have said anything. Another situation where I couldn't keep the fucking surprise to myself. Carly said we rented it for Friday and Saturday. Sorry, guys.
With this setback in morale and sitting in this weird, dusty chapel, it gets me thinking about this whole endeavor.
The idea of coming in this weird room, in this weird church, for what? Like, what is this really?
The creative process. I mean, that's the creative process, right? And that's what I love.
But why is this worth it? Is what we do.
David Zayas, the co-artistic director of Primitive Grace.
As simple as that. It's what we do. Especially when you're doing a show like this, you're not doing it for the paycheck. You're doing it because you want to create something important. You want to create something that people are going to feel, you know? And so that's why we do it. That's why, if you're an artist, You make that decision before you accept anything. But once you accept it, you got to be all in, or it doesn't work.
Beyond all the fear and the perfectionism and, feeling like I'm not going to fulfill it or screw it up. That's just mind chatter. Beyond that, there's a creative process that's alive with this group of people where everybody trusts each other, everybody has each other's back, and so, you recreate a family in a way, And I think a lot of artists, a lot of actors I know come from fractured backgrounds, or, we all bring ourselves to the room, and then we are healing something by doing this together.
I don't think you can forget that there's nothing more troubling than getting up in front of people and playing a part that isn't you. It's beyond worrisome for anyone. No matter how experienced or skilled they are, assert themselves to be, wish they were, pretend to be, whatever it is, no matter what it is, what level of skill or proficiency or technical prowess they possess or have achieved in their life, every single person at one point or another doesn't know what to do up there. With their hands, with their body, something, They don't realize how they look. They don't know what they're doing, right? There are times where each performer, no matter which skill level, what caliber of natural talent or honed talent, right? No matter what, they're adrift. At one point or another, they're adrift. Some are more conscious of it. Some actors will be like, I don't know what I'm doing here, right? Others won't say anything, and you have to spot it. Oh, this person doesn't know what they're doing there. So, listen, we need each other, you can't ignore, it would be very selfish to ignore that, for instance, I say that, I gotta be there to liven spirits, right? And to keep the faith, right? And to, to not allow the fight to fail, you have to keep the fight alive, and keep the body alive on the operating table. It's this very, very crucial moment every day, right? Minute to minute. It's about stay in it, and feel like you're in the right place. Know that you're supposed to be doing what you're doing right now. Don't lose faith. Don't lose that faith. I'm here for you. So that process of morale boosting, if you want to call it that, I think people's personalities and internal lives need to be tended to, and you need to care about each other and care for each other, and not ignore that.
The next time I'm there, it's their first day on the real stage, 2 days from the opening. It happens to be the first time I experienced the super intense last scene of the play. I noticed that Gregg Prosser, who plays the cop, is lying down nearly unconscious for the entire long scene. I catch him on a break.
I remember I saw a play recently where Lois Smith was on a bed almost the entire play, and I thought, in the beginning I thought, this is wonderful, and then toward the end I thought, this is deceptively hard. So in the last scene you're laying down the whole time, but that's not easy, is it?
No, not at all.
When you read that in the script, were you just like, oh, cool?
No. It's funny because when you're actors, you have this ego, right?
Yeah.
And now you're a set piece. To be honest, it was difficult to come, it was difficult to accept it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was you always want to be down front and doing the work and everything. Yeah. But I think it's, in the ensemble, it's all for one for all type of thing. So Sometimes you gotta suck it up and, do it.
On opening night, my wife and I entered the church through the front doors. I'm just a normal member of the audience now. I'm more nervous than I have ever been seeing a play. I can't even imagine what it's like for actors on opening night. The intensity feels earned and true. The power is palpable. I applaud at the end like a proud uncle. I'd love to say this experience makes me want to do this one day. And in a way it does. But the fear isn't gone. I just look at it differently now. I respect it.
There's so many fears that come up for every performer. You have to, from a directorial standpoint, be able to commiserate with those fears, but the only way you would even be able to commiserate with those fears and empathize with that kind of constant companionship of fear, the only way you could do that is if you are racked with it yourself. Paul always says that's your constant companion, is fear. And I don't think I ever thought of it so vividly in that way. That's a very picturesque description of it. That wherever I go, I walk with fear. Fear is by my side. That is my companion. That's who's following me. That's who's accompanying me, is fear.
This episode is produced and edited by me, Peter Rinaldi. Co-produced by Spencer Rain. Music by Matt Schwartzer. For more information on Primitive Grace Theater Ensemble, go to primitivegrace.org.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.